Well, it's Friday night again, and that means it's atheist Bible study night. Um, yeah, picking up where we left off last week, I was pointing out that there was a difference between Mark and Luke on this parable of the patch sewn onto an unshrunken cloth. And it's very interesting the difference that's there. As you see with we can compare it with Luke and we compare it with Thomas. Um, Thomas just calls it old patch. Mark calls it unshrunken cloth. Thomas calls it a new garment. Mark calls it an old garment. But there's actually another interesting difference between these two things. And I just noticed this last week, and I've been thinking about it a lot this week, actually. It's kind of interesting. Why does Mark use a Gnostic code word here? I've read this verse all my life, but I never noticed this until last week. Um, if we read through here, Mark uses a very interesting way to describe how this unshrunken cloth hurts the cloak. All right, let's just read through here. No one sews a piece of unshrunken cloth on an old cloak. If he does, its fullness pulls away the new from the old, and the tear gets worse. Fullness? Why would they be using this word fullness here? Now, in Greek, this word is a pleuroma. And I don't know if Mark did this. I mean, Mark obviously did this deliberately. I mean, you can compare this with Thomas, and you can compare it with Luke, and you can see the Mark. Neither one of them uses this word, but this word pleroma will eventually be taken up by the Gnostics in a big way. Let me just put on the board here some uses of this, which are found in some other Gnostic writings. Okay, so for example, the Gospel of Truth. Uses this word all over the place. First quote here: "By the power of the Logos, who has come from the pleroma." And yeah, if you hear the echoes of the Gospel of John, yeah, you certainly do. John is another one that uses this pleroma word. God came and he destroyed the division. He brought the hot pleroma. That's one of my favorite ones. It's a heated fullness, as Luke Timothy Johnson calls it. This is the word of the gospel, finding the pleroma. I mean, pleroma all over the place. This is just one thing. Let's go on to a next one. There's another. Valentinian is a school of Gnosticism. And it's talking about some divine being here. I used to dwell in the pleroma, putting forth the aeons and bearing fruit with my consort. And my favorite one on this page, all those of the pleroma and of the syzygy, that is, of the angels. So why does Mark use this Gnostic code? Well, first of all, what were the Gnostics? What did they use this pleroma to actually symbolize? Okay, well, the pleroma was this realm from which Jesus Christ was supposed to have come. It's sort of like the if you're familiar with Plato's philosophies, it's sort of like the realm where the forms live, where the ideals live, where the abstract Platonic ideals are up there. It's kind of like the world of mathematics, numbers are there, this kind of thing, and in contrast to this fleshly world, and things in the pleroma are perfect and wonderful, as opposed to things here in this cosmic disaster area that we inhabit are being just not perfect, unperfect, spoiled and things like this. So the pleroma is kind of like this realm, and in Gnostic mythology, it's like we've fallen from this pleroma, and we're just like little sparks of light trying to find our way back to the pleroma, and that's what Jesus came to do. So it's kind of interesting that Mark would really phrase it this way. So what does this mean in terms of Mark's relationship? How is Mark portraying Jesus' relationship to the law with this phraseology here? Okay, the fullness is pulling away. Okay, it's like we really are citizens of this divine world, this pleroma, and it's pulling away from this old world of the flesh, or this old world of the this created world of material things. I think this is just one man's opinion. I think Mark is using this to really symbolize that Jesus really isn't that much of a reformer of the law in Mark here. He's really saying that The fullness has come, and we're pulling away from these old practices, from this old religion, right? And it's the old cloak that's torn. Okay, in stark contrast to Luke, where it's the new cloak that's torn. In Mark, it's the old cloak that's torn. And I think what he's talking about here is, he's tearing up the old religion, tearing up the old law. Just take the old law and just tear it. And yeah, I think Prof MTH just pointed out a relationship between these sorts of things and anti-Semitism. And I think does reveal kind of incipient anti-Semitism here. Where we're just ripping up the old, and later on this tendency is going to develop in very nasty ways. But I think that's what Mark's relationship to the Old Testament is being portrayed at in Mark here. It's a pulling away. The fullness has come. This has been fulfilled, so we're pulling away, and we're just ripping up the old system here, right? So let's go into some particulars here. Okay, so what are some of the scandalous things that Jesus does that we've seen? Okay, we've seen he touches lepers, which is absolutely forbidden by the law. He after he calls Levi, he goes and eats with Levi in his house, and he eats with tax collectors. What a scandal! Um, I should mention here that the Jews had very strict rules about eating. Eating was a big deal for these guys. First of all, you had to wash your hands, which is something which really didn't happen that often in the ancient world. You had to wash your hands before you ate, and you just absolutely could not eat with non-Jews. I mean, that just was like just beyond the pale. It was just something they did back then. Also, fasting. Fasting's a very interesting thing. I want to go into this one a little bit more detail here. I'll read from Mark 2:18 and following. Okay, the disciples of John and of the Pharisees were accustomed to fast, and people came to him and objected. Why do the disciples of John and the disciples of the Pharisees fast, but your disciples do not fast? Now, interesting thing here. Remember, John the Baptist is still alive at this point. Okay, he's in prison, but he hasn't been killed yet. And John still has a lot of disciples. As I've been harping in this thing, John really was a bigger deal than Jesus was. And apparently, the disciples of John the Baptist, John the Baptist, still had a lot of disciples at this point, and they fasted. And apparently, this was a broader thing. I mean, if you were like a Jew in Palestine, then and you were like trying to take it to the next level, fasting was like one of the things that you would do. Now it's kind of interesting. Jesus' response here is that the bridegroom's with him. When I go away, these guys are going to fast. And in point of fact, we do have some corroborating evidence that early Christianity fasting was a part of their thing. I want to quote a little bit from the Didache here. The Didache is pretty much it's the first church manual that we've found that was written specifically for Christians. It's written about scholars dated around 100 A.D., so it's very early. It may even have been written before some of the books in the New Testament was written. But basically, it's just kind of like a church rule and tells you how to live a good Christian life. And one of my favorite quotes of it here is this one. It says, "Let your fasts not take place with those of the wicked. They fast on Monday and Thursday. You, though, should fast on Wednesday and Friday." So, not with those wicked, evil hypocrites who are fasting on Monday and Thursday. Oh, no, don't do that. So, fasting was actually a part of early Christianity, at least in some of the communities that were there. So, Jesus' prediction here that his disciples would fast eventually did come true. Another one of the reasons why they fasted this way is so they would have food to share with other people. Sharing food was a very big deal here. I'll talk more about the food aspect of this next week. But notice another thing here. The days of the week are becoming important to Christians here. Christians are differentiating themselves by the days on which they fasted. And eventually, Christians are also going to start differentiating themselves by the day that they keep holy. Right? Christians are going to start worshiping on Sunday instead of on Saturday. And this is the perfect setup for next week. I don't have time to discuss it this week. But next week, we will talk about Jesus and the Sabbath. Stay tuned.